Hey everyone, as promised, I am going to do an episode today just on depression. That's the question I'm most often asked about. I usually like to just talk to you off the cuff, but depression is a real big passion of mine. And being a caregiver, it could be easy to slip into that. So I typed out bullet points because I didn't want to leave anything out. So here we go. These are questions that people have asked me, and so I'm going to share them with you. I've had several people approach me asking me questions about depression, so I wanted to answer some of these for you. Number one, did the depression hit you like a ton of bricks, or did it slip up on you? For me, it was like a cancer, meaning at first there aren't any signs. Then, if undetected, it can grow and metastasize and spread. Sometime before you realize it, you are in full depression and may not even be aware of it. It snuck up on me and gripped me like a vice. It messes with the chemicals in your brain, and you begin to feel like you don't recognize yourself anymore. It started first with me giving up music, which was the best tool God had given me. I had used it throughout my life, and I could be having a bad day or stressing out about something and come home and get on the piano and sing for about 30 minutes, and suddenly my stress was gone. When my dad was diagnosed with ALS, I put the music off to the side because the only thing that mattered to me was being a great caregiver to my dad. So we cared for my dad for 3 years before he passed. We sang at his funeral 1 month, then my best friends the next month, and then all the others that I've talked about in recent episodes. I didn't realize it at the time until one day I was riding down the road in silence, and had been for some time before I even realized it. I suddenly found myself hating music because I had begun to relate music to death. And now I drew solace from the thing that I'd always feared most, silence. I've thought about it and come up with 5 types of depressed people. A, the deniers. They have no idea they're dealing with anxiety or depression. They know something's wrong, but they don't know what to do about it or where to go or who to talk to. There are the deflectors. The people keep themselves frantically busy to keep themselves from stopping long enough to face and deal with their loss. So they always have to stay busy. C is the rejectors. They refuse help and end up feeling alone, like no one cares about them or what they're dealing with, when initially it was themselves that withdrew from everyone they loved. D, the neglectors. They're embarrassed or ashamed to admit they're being depressed, or they won't reach out and ask for help. So they suffer in silence, thinking it's just part of life and you're not meant to be happy. They can sometimes feel like suicide is the only way out. Out of these 4, I can tell you I have been a card-carrying member of all of them at one point or the other, and also of the next one I'll talk about. Some people never reach out for help because they think it makes them weak. I'll be honest enough to tell you that I dealt with this on my own for 4 years before I reached out for help. Now it's E. This is the one that probably had me the worst, and they're called the trick-or-treaters, and I'll explain that. This is a dangerous group to be a part of, but I was very good at it. These are people that have always been in the public eye, on stage, behind a pulpit, holding a microphone, teaching a class. People have a certain perception of these people. They know and see you as this fun-loving people person that serves and encourages everyone, and they are supposed to always be on and never have a bad day. I know myself personally. I've had people that were my heroes, yet when I met them in person, I was disappointed because the way I perceived them was putting them on a pedestal but out of the public eye, their personality or demeanor weren't the same. The reason I call these trick-or-treaters is because you can go out in public and suffer from depression or having an off day, yet when someone that knows you comes up to you, you pull out that old mask that was yourself and you wear it and try to be the person that they know. I could hold up for about 10 minutes, but it was so draining I would usually go to my car and go home. I found it easier to just withdraw and not go out in public. Let me tell you what happens. You get yourself into a canoe and paddle out to a remote island to be by yourself. After a while, that turns into, nobody loves or cares about what I'm going through, when actually you've created the narrative. You appear to be fine, not because you're being fake, but because you don't want anyone to feel awkward around the new you. The real reason for people not reaching out is because they don't know how you're struggling, because you haven't reached out to anyone for help. I was told I would probably not be able to share my story with people that weren't of faith, because there are two halves that make the whole of my story. One was admitting that I needed help. The other was realizing God was trying to help tell me something. I can't just tell half of the story without the other part. So without the music, I knew I was in trouble, because that was my most powerful tool God had given me. I searched and found the most awesome grief counselor. Her name was Mary Schultz. Okay, I want to tell you a little story about my first trip to grief counseling. 4 years had went by, and I'm going to tell you about my first trip to therapy. I was so nervous. All I had ever seen were therapists on TV. I was on my way to work at 4 a.m. I was thinking how I'd rather be having a root canal than go to therapy that day. That's the way I envisioned it would go. She would have me lying on one of those chase couches. She would be sitting in front of me with her glasses perched on the end of her nose, her legs crossed, and writing on one of those legal pads. And if I were to be able to look at that pad, it would look like a kid that had gotten in trouble at school and had to write 100 times, "He's a nut, he's a nut, he's a nut." So I entered the interstate at 4 a.m. Nobody was on the road, so I went across 3 lanes of traffic. A little sidebar, I'm extremely stubborn, so when God is trying to get my attention, He has to pull out a sledgehammer and all the bells and whistles. Imagine my surprise when suddenly I heard a siren and blue lights pull in right behind me. An unmarked police car pulled me over. I never saw until he had gotten me. The officer comes up to my window and asks for my information. When he came back, I was very apologetic and told him what my family had endured in the past 2 years and that my mind was preoccupied due to worrying about going to therapy. The next question he asked me was a surprise coming from a policeman. He said, "Do you believe in God?" I responded, I did, and that I had traveled with my family singing gospel music for over 17 years. Yet due to singing at all the funerals that we'd had, I had to give up the thing I loved most and had brought me the most joy, which was music. He said in turn, "With everything you just told me you've been through, I would love to be there with you when God brings you out of this on the other side, just to see what blessings He has for you." I didn't get a ticket. That was the good thing. As I pulled off, I kept looking at the blinding blue lights in my rearview mirror, and then the humor kind of hit me, and I snickered, saying, "Okay, God, you got my attention." For the longest time, I thought that officer was an angel sent by God. I'll come back to him a little later. I had become so accustomed to holding all my feelings and grief inside. I sat down in my grief counselor's office that day, and when I opened my mouth to speak, all I could do was cry. I sat there and cried for 10 minutes before I could even get one word out. I was just so proud that I had finally decided that I was worth it, and I was going I wanted to save my life, and I set my pride to the side. Sometimes it's your pride that gets in the way. You have to get it out of the way to admit you need help. Some people that suffer from depression feel like the only way out is suicide. I've often heard some say, they took the coward's way out. That's not true. Sometimes you have a catastrophic event in your life, like a loss that you can't get over, like losing a loved one. They fear that if they reach out to tell someone they are hurting, that they will be considered weak. They carry the burden like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. I never felt suicidal per se, but God allowed me to feel the emotions of feeling helpless and hopeless that a lot of them feel. I shared with my therapist that I had to have those feelings to be able to write songs that would give people hope, that if I had what happened to me and come out of it, sure, with scars and bruises, that there was hope for them. I believe pain is pain. Most people have had their worst day, and I've had my worst day, whatever the case may be, but we all can bond through the word pain because we've all experienced it in some way or some form or fashion. I was mad at myself because I waited so long to try and get help. They tried me on 15 different antidepressants, and they would either have no effect or make me deathly ill. Then they decided that I didn't have the run-of-the-mill depression. I was diagnosed with what's called complicated grief depression. This is where you experience so much loss in such a short span that there's no way you could grieve enough for all you've lost. And it just compacts until you just get emotionally stuck. Grief therapy helped me open up. That's what I tell people so much. Grief therapy, I can't praise it enough that it helped because it made me pull what was inside of me out. She gave me the courage to face my depression head on. She didn't take any of my junk because I'm stubborn, so she called me out if she thought I was trying to take the easy way out. She finally told me one day that there were two things I needed to do to get back amongst the people, no matter how uncomfortable. Dig deep into my religious background for strength and start singing, writing, and playing again. That's what God had equipped me for. I started slowly. After 8 years, she told me to find songs that made me happy. Gotta confess that I'm a totally different person now. Sure, the old me is in there. That's a people person who loves to sing and laugh. But one thing that's changed is as much as I love these things, I now also love the silence. If you've listened to anything I've said, it's talking to someone. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If you don't have a friend, a family member, or a therapist to confide in, I will tell you one person you could go to that knows the problem before we even ask, and that's God. And you can go to Him and ask Him for help, and I promise you He will never tell your business. Remember, you are never alone. If you don't hear anything else I say, always know you are never alone. Reach out to someone. So please always do that. Suicide is so final that I know a lot of days when I was going through depression, sometimes I would feel helpless and hopeless, and the next day I'd wake up and it would be a better day, and I was like, well, what if I had committed suicide the day before? So that made me start thinking that way. Even though I was going to therapy, I have to say I had no zest for life. It wasn't that I wanted to die, but it just hurt too much to live. After all the losses I had experienced, I made a stupid statement to God. I said, God, I can live the rest of my life miserable and just try to make others happy if you just don't take anything else from me. Well, wouldn't you know, a few weeks later, the company that I had worked so hard for 28 years decided to do away with our positions at work. My pride was hurt at first, but I decided it was time for me to take a break and learn how to enjoy life again. Now I'm about to tell you how God tested me to see if I was ready for His true purpose, and this is a very valuable story because God finally hit me hard enough with a sledgehammer that He got it through my thick skull. He helped me figure out what my true purpose in life was, and I'm 50, so it took me a while to get there, even though I was raised with a religious background. We were in inventory and had a new inventory manager come from corporate, and we had never met. One day I came into the conference room where he and my fellow employees were teasing me about retiring. This guy looks at me and he says, "Are you retiring? You're too young to retire." I began sharing with him what my family had faced. Suddenly he says, "I know exactly how you feel." The next thing I knew, I looked around the room and it had cleared out except for the two of us, and he began crying. He said, "My wife and I had one son, he was 20, and we moved for me to take this job. His son then commits suicide and didn't leave a note and didn't show any signs. Keep in mind, in the past, this would have made me very uncomfortable when we traveled singing, because if you were to come up to me to try to talk to me about depression or suicide, it would make me awkward, because in my personal life, I didn't feel like I had anything to offer you but my voice." It's what he said next that caused me to act. He said, "And I've thought about killing myself several times. I didn't even have to think. I pulled out a chair, sat there with him, and talked and prayed with him for about 30 minutes. I told him, nothing or no one will ever fill the hole left in your heart from your son, because he occupied a part only he could fill. I said, I'm at the point in my journey where I can reach out and try to help you avoid the same pitfalls I had. And one day you may reach a point in your recovery where you will come across someone that's just beginning their journey of loss, and you'll be able to reach down and pick them up." When I walked out of the office that day, I said, "Okay, God, I get it. You just revealed to me what my true purpose in life is. It's not to just sing pretty, but I had to go through some stuff to be able to feel the words I sang, because now I feel every word." And I said, "I won't question you again." So that helped me move on. God was testing me to see if I could handle the course He had set before me. Pain is pain, and that's the one denominator or the one cord that weaves us together. Now back to that officer that had pulled me over on my way to my first grief counseling session. This is another true story. I had at first questioned my faith. Did I believe God's word because I really believed it, or was it because my parents told me to do so? I found out I believe because I believe it. I had been tied to religion by my family my entire life and was a different person than I had been. When you're raised hearing about God your entire life, sometimes you can end up being like the person who's never heard about God. It's not that you take it for granted, but then again, you kind of do. It's not until you have to reach down deep and put it into action that you finally get it. I started going to a new church by myself. One night when the pastor called me unexpectedly up to sing, which, by the way, was the first time I had been on stage for 8 years, I spotted a man in the audience. It was the officer that had pulled me over. I went up to him after the service and introduced myself and reminded him of what he had said to me that day. I said, "I guess God heard your prayer, because here we both are, and I'm now on the other side." I thought for the longest time that he was an angel, and to some extent he was. What does depression feel like? There's always a part of me that worries I'll fall back into that black hole again, especially now that I'm Mom's caretaker and she's suffering from dementia, and she's my whole heart. I've decided that the way I shut down the first go around as a caregiver with my dad didn't work out so well. So I've immersed myself in the Bible, devotional journals. Next episode, I will talk to you about this incredible book and tell you how it helped me so much. And actually, I'm not going to wait till the next episode. I'm going to talk about the book. I've got it laying right here beside me, and it never leaves my side very much. The last thing was music. I have to admit, I had to apologize to God. I said, God, whatever roadblocks I've caused to be put in my way, I pray that you'll move them, because without you and the music in my heart and life, I'm not going to make it. Within 2 days, I found myself in the middle of him giving me 8 songs. I couldn't write them down fast enough. My job taking care of Mom can be taxing and frustrating, but instead of dwelling on the bad, God has taught me how to literally stop and smell the roses, to enjoy every second I get to spend with my mom. A lot of times it's how we react and perceive a situation that sways our way of thinking, and we can block our blessing. Lastly, someone asked me how depression felt. I'm a very visual person, so this is how it felt to me. It feels like I'm running down a dark alley, and I just know someone is chasing me, and they are right on my heels. They're so close I can feel their breath on the back of my neck. If you have some of these feelings or behaviors, please talk to someone. Remember, God will never leave us or forsake us. I'll never try to self-diagnose anybody. Like I said, I don't have a PhD after my name. What I'm telling you, it didn't come from a diploma, a degree. It didn't come from a book. It's real life experience. I can remember being told the story of Job when I was small, and they said, Job had patience. God let the devil take everything that he had, and he still served the Lord. Tie the little bow around it. The end. Well, I was an inquisitive even as a child and knew there had to be more to this story. I would think, this guy can't be for real. How could he still be cool with God during all of this? Well, while going through depression, I couldn't relate to Job until one day I read the entire story, and guess what? It went on to say that bad things were still happening to Job, and he cried out to God and asked for answers, and God did not respond. He finally said, where are you? Why are you not talking to me? And in those times when Job felt God was thousands of miles away, in reality, he was actually carrying Job. God is an on-time God. His ways are not our ways, and we may think he's not working fast enough. But we never know what he is working for our good or what tragedies he's keeping us from behind the scenes. You just have to trust that he's working all things for our good. Okay? Now I wanted to show you one of the biggest tools I have had in my journey this time as a caretaker. I've told you what not to do, and that's hold everything inside. You can do one of 3 things. You can laugh, you can cry, you can hold everything in, or you can trust God. The one thing I can tell you not to do is hold everything in. We're leading up to the videos, and I'm going to show you the different therapies and things like that I tried with my mom to try to retain what memory we had. And you'll see us laughing, and you'll think, well, yeah, she's got a mild case of it. But those were filmed maybe a year to probably 2 years ago, so we're a little bit further on now. Like I'm her baby and her only boy, and just this past week, she has not said my name. She either calls me Daddy or Jack, which is her husband, my dad's name. But I don't care, just as long as she calls me something. So we've had a pretty bad week, and I'm sorry it took me so long to do this, because we've just had a bunch of issues this week. She likes to get up and wander a lot at night, so we've had to try to do things to adjust her sleep and use different products. And I've slept a lot on the couch, and my sister and I try to keep an eye on her to keep her from falling. And I'll tell you about some of the things that you can use to help know if your loved one gets out of bed and different things like that. So we're leading up to that. But I don't ever want you to think that this is an easy journey. I don't want you to look at the videos and think, oh, he makes it look so easy. It's not easy. It's really not. This time I'm having to try and stay positive. I'm also reading a book I'll talk about later. about Alzheimer's patients, and it helps you get inside the mind of why they may be acting out or doing some of the things that they're doing. And that book has really helped me. But if the depression has taught me anything from the first time, I have to know when to back out of that book, because if I stay in it and read it long enough, then I start feeling depressed. I automatically have to run and find me some praise and worship music to get me out of that. So I believe in being informed, but I believe you have to learn to know yourself and like yourself and love yourself, not like yourself, and know what you got to do, to keep from the devil tormenting your mind. But this book right here, and I asked her permission before I said anything about it. I found this book one day in a Christian bookstore in Easley, South Carolina, and it's called Grace for the Unexpected Journey, and it's written by Deborah Barr. This journal has been everything to me, because it's the book that I needed, that I didn't even know existed, and I didn't even know I needed. But she does such a great job. It's a journal for caregivers for dementia patients, and she gives you a topic every day and how it relates to you being a caregiver and the person you're caring for. Then she brings stuff out of you, like how does this pertain to you? So then it gives you like a journal where you can write after the devotional how you're feeling and how it's pertaining to your life and your situation. So even if you don't like to talk to people, this book, I mean, as long as you'll get it out, keep a journal. I've kept a regular journal of the different things that Mom and I do on a day-to-day basis, because for the past 2 years I take her to the coffee house, and we do flashcards and just different things for remembering. I'll cover all that later, but this book right here, I wanted to read some of it to you so you could see how much you needed it too. This was day 25, page 123, and it's called Laughter. And it made me really think, because there's some funny things that have happened with Mom here lately, and I will never, ever, please know that I would never make fun of my mom. But you can either laugh or cry. And so we decided to try to just have fun with her. You know, not laugh at her, but laugh with her. Okay, this one says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And that's Proverbs 17 and 22. In an article about frontotemporal dementia, FTD, Comedy Central producer Nicole Savini wrote, FTD is not funny, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to laugh about. She shared how quick-witted father got his wife, who has FTD, to laugh. On a recent trip, my mother told my father that she was looking out for dead animals on the side of the road. Rather than worry about why my mom had said something so out of character, my dad quickly responded, "Oh, hon, I didn't realize you were that hungry." She thought that was very funny. There's some things that are just so funny, you have to laugh at them, said Sarah, a full-time Alzheimer's caregiver for her husband. She described how her husband had gone to change out of his church clothes and came back wearing, along with his black socks and dress shoes, a pair of Sarah's capri pants. How he got them on, I don't know, she said. I really wasn't laughing at him. I was kind of laughing with him. But God's design, laughter boosts both the spiritual and the spiritual, physical, and emotional health. And many positive effects on well-being can strengthen your resiliency and help you cope better with the challenges of caregiving. Experts say that laughter, strengthens your immune system by increasing antibodies. The next is relaxes muscles throughout the body, relaxes tension, anxiety, and stress, lowers bad cholesterol and elevates good cholesterol, increases blood vessel elasticity, increases energy, helps prevent heart disease, improves social connections, shifts perspectives in a positive direction. These physical and mental health benefits underscore what King Solomon wrote around 900 BC. A cheerful heart is good medicine. Or, to say that another way, being cheerful helps you keep healthy. If the wisest man of all were alive today, Solomon might even agree that laughter is indeed the best medicine. The world don't always want to quote the Bible, so they have to find a different way to say it. So they say laughter is the best medicine, where the Bible talks about laughter doeth the body good, and prescribe a daily dose of it for stressed out caregivers. Laughter counteracts the effects of stress by stopping the release of the stress hormone cortisol and triggering the release of dopamine, which has a calming, anxiety relieving effect. At least once a day, look away from the duties and challenges of caregiving and find something that makes you laugh. Stay in close touch with your most upbeat Christian friends. Look for funny books, movies, and internet videos. Even when those things can't be found, laugh anyway. Your body can't tell the difference between a genuine or a fake laugh. The benefits of laughter accrue regardless of why you're laughing. So today and every day, go ahead and laugh because it's really good for you. And then it says, dementia's not funny, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to laugh about. And then after that, she gives you a space that says, if the responsibilities of caregiving have put a damper on your sense of humor, how can you bring some laughter back into your life each day? And my answer was, I still have my sense of humor. The next question, what do the built-in health benefits of laughter tell you about God, about His love and concern for you? He gives us things in our body that help us cope with situations, and I've always said God has a sense of humor. Okay, so then it's my journal. It gives you a chance to write. I was gone, and my sister was aggravating my mom and said, I'm going to tell Greg on you, Sandra said. What's he going to do? Mom said. He's going to beat your behind. Mom and I were in Marshall's one day, and she blurts out, I've got number 2. 2 minutes later, she comes out, and I said, Mom, there's no way you poop that fast. She responded, I just decided to take it with me. I fell on the floor on that one. My sisters and I took her to Outback Steakhouse. My back was turned to Mom, and to Donna, my older sister's dismay, Mom started pulling her skirt up to fix her slip. I said, Mama, put your skirt down. We're at Outback, not a strip club. And I try and steer her away from people that look different. One day we were in Target, and this unattractive, I hate to say it, lady was on the aisle we went down. She kept saying my name, Greg, Greg, Greg. I said, no, Mother. We got right up on the lady, and Mama blurts out, Greg, look, she has the longest face. If someone's short, she'll say, look how short, ain't they cute? This one lady had on shorts and had really big legs, and she turned and looked at me and said, her legs are impossible. Every time she gets up to use the restroom, she spends 10 minutes straightening her covers and does the same thing before she goes and gets back in the bed. And we think, they revert back to childhood. So her first job was working at a blanket plant. So one night I went up to her while she was doing this, and I said, Miss Walls, you can go ahead and clock out now. The blanket plant has closed. It's time for you to go to bed. I've said some things this week to her that I've never thought I would have to say, but I'm pretty sure she probably had to say them to me too when I was little. The first one being, no, Mom, don't use the litter box. The cats don't like to share. Or, don't chew your medicine. That's not a handful of Tic Tacs. Let's see, there's one other thing that she has done this week. She's just really funny, and I just try to take a sense of humor with her. And one day we had an accident with, I don't want to sound crass, but number 2, and it got on stuff, and so I basically looked at her and was like, what's wrong with you? Did your mama not let you finger paint when you were a kid? So that's what I do. Now, I have days when both my sisters work in a nursing home, and so sometimes when Sandra gets home at 6 o'clock, she lives with Mom and I. Uh, Even if it's for 2 hours, I'll get out and go to the track or just get off by myself to kind of reset myself, because I have to admit to you, I'm as dependent on Mom as she is on me. She, when the days that I'm off, I feel guilty because I'm not there with her, and so it can just be frustrating. And I find myself, we've got a baby monitor in her room, and I've got the receiver in my room. So at night I have that wide open, so I don't really even get good sleep. It's basically like I'm sleeping with one eye open. So I stay tired a lot, and then I have to have a whole lot of Jesus and a whole lot of caffeine and a whole lot of coffee and a whole lot of energy drinks. But I write in a journal of the things she and I do every day. That way I'll always have them. Every time something changes in her demeanor or her eating habits, I write in quotation at the top to let me know what day this happened on. And one thing in life I hate is change. I hate it. And so one of the first things this book said is God chooses who he knows can be a caregiver. And he sends you to his university of caregiving to teach you, because he knows you've got what it takes to be a caregiver. And when I read that meant a lot to me, because it brought me back to the story in the Bible about Moses and how he stuttered. So when God called him to speak, he was like, well, have you considered my brother Aaron? He's the one that's the public speaker and has such eloquent words, and I can't even talk plain. But you know what? It's the way it goes is God won't always call the equipped, but you can be assured he'll always equip the called. So if you're a caregiver today, one thing you can take heart and take pride in is that you wouldn't be the caregiver had God not have known you could handle it. Sometimes when you feel at your weakest, that's when you're at your strongest. One thing I've learned to do with Mom is I just agree with her. I don't argue with her. If she sees a purple dog over there, then I'm like, hey, let me pet that purple dog. Or if she says, well, you didn't do this right or you didn't do that right, then I'm just like, well, I'm so sorry. I tried hard to do it, and I promise I'll do better. So what's bad about it is 5 minutes after that, she never remembers she even said it. But guess what? My feelings are still hurt. So sometimes you have to get away by yourself, and I have to get on my piano and play a little bit to get me through that little hurt feeling stage. But you just have to do everything you can to keep them from getting distressed. And one good example of this is I had taken my mom to this very crowded mall, and we would go there all the time. But this particular day, she got so discombobulated and confused there, and there was just so much racket, noise, and people. It was before the coronavirus came about. But she was really upset and said she wanted to go home. So that's what we did. So I do whatever she wants to do, wherever she wants to go, whatever she wants to eat. I just agree with her, because in their mind, you're not going to be able to change the way they're thinking at that point. It's almost like an inside